He had lived in a little house with 3 of his siblings, but at age 7, his house caught on fire. One brother was trapped inside and died. He and his sister ran out of the front door, were standing in the front yard when his other brother came out in flames.
Wow.
And died that same week. He said that the next Sunday he went to church, at a church where he had been taught that Jesus loved him. And the pastor came over to him and said, "Can I pray for you?" And he said, "No, how can I believe in a God who loves me?" Basically, who would have let something like this happen. And so what happened from there was he developed, as he grew older, of course, there was just an intense amount of emotional pain, but he wrapped that emotional pain in kind of a rational armor.
Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reason with faith. Is there, out of all of, the 50 that you've interviewed for your PhD, but then the other, are those 50 also included in Ex-Skeptic podcast?
A few of them
Okay,
are.
a few of them. So some of those in the 120 in your podcast, a lot of those are not from your study. So those are additional.
Right.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the totality of, so you might have interviewed over 160, let's say, or so, conversions, right? Stories and testimonies. From those, are there some that are really impactful that, really stay with you, whether it's in the book or whether it's not in the book, in your book, that really stick out to you?
Yes. There's different kinds of stories, just like we talked about different kinds of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
There are some stories that are very dramatic in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
That the transformation is so dramatic that you can only say only God.
Mm-hmm.
The very first gentleman that I sat down with in England to hear his story, they had to fill out a little form talking about what age did you become an atheist and why did you become an atheist. And he had become an atheist at age 7. And
Wow.
I knew something dramatic or traumatic must have happened. And sure enough, as soon as he sat down, he just started spilling out. He had lived in a little house with 3 of his siblings, but at age 7, his house caught on fire. One brother was trapped inside and died. He and his sister ran out of the front door, were standing in the front yard when his other brother came out in flames.
Wow.
And died that same week. He said that the next Sunday he went to church, at a church where he had been taught that Jesus loved him. And the pastor came over to him and said, "Can I pray for you?" And he said, "No, how can I believe in a God who loves me?" Basically, who would have let something like this happen. And so what happened from there was he developed, as he grew older, of course, there was just an intense amount of emotional pain, but he wrapped that emotional pain in kind of a rational armor. So he became highly intellectual and rational with regard, and evangelical in his atheism.
Right.
It was as if he didn't believe in God. He didn't want anybody else to believe in God. He wouldn't even step foot in a church for a wedding or a funeral. So his walls were very high.
Yeah.
At age 26, because the big question for me in looking at all of these stories is, someone is moving down one direction. Okay, what changes that? What disrupts that? What makes someone become open? What opens the door to a possibility of God? For him, he came back home from a business trip. His wife at the time had become a Christian. That just was fuel to the fire for his marriage, which was contentious as it was. One night he went to go pick her up at the house of the couple that had brought her to Christ, and he was expecting, this heated exchange. And he walked in, and they offered him a cup of coffee and to sit down and just to visit. He said, And I think that he had become quite a hardened, difficult personality because of the statement that he made. He
Mm.
said, "They valued me. They treated me like I was a human."
Wow.
So they just sat down. They didn't, he didn't berate them at the moment, but they just had just a lovely conversation and
Mm.
visited. And he felt so valued that he wanted to come back. So
Wow.
he started coming back. They would open their home to him every night. They never talked about God, pushed religion, or any of that until
Wow.
several weeks later, where he kept coming back. He was developing a genuine friendship and love for one another here and
Mhm.
respect for each other until he started bringing up the questions of God and suffering and pain in his own life.
Wow.
Um, but over a period of time, it took months really, to where
Mhm.
he ran out of arguments and issues against God. They had been so gracious, but also informed. They
Mm.
were knowledgeable, they were thoughtful about their own faith. It was obvious that they took their belief in God seriously, so they could have meaningful exchange as well as just this warmth and care that exuded from them.
Wow.
And finally, he said, the gentleman said, "Can I pray for you?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, I wasn't exactly sure what he was praying or what it meant, but he said, all I knew was I felt a peace overcome me that I had never known before. And he said, I
Wow.
woke up the next morning expecting this anger to return. And he said, it
Mhm.
didn't. And he said, from there, actually, he went on to become a pastor in his
Wow.
little English community, just going around and healing the emotional wounds, serving, loving people in his community like he had been loved. And now he's a strong apologist for the Christian faith,
Wow.
not only intellectually, but spiritually in every other way. I think just because I think that was the first story that I really heard, and it was so dramatic.
Mhm.
That one always sticks with me, but it speaks to how emotional pain can be ministered to with love. Sometimes the
Mm.
best apologetic is not I don't think an argument right away for him would have made any difference. I think it would have probably fueled the fire, and it would have just been a game of firing intellectual bullets. But instead, he was softened and loved and
Mhm.
brought into the possibility of God because he had felt it, through these people, and
Yeah.
also seen the life change in his wife. So he knew that there was something real. He just didn't know quite what to do with it. But over time, he allowed himself um, to become open to the possibility, and yeah, it was a beautiful ending.
Wow. That is that's incredible. Praise God.